Right from the start, we're hit with breaking news about a controversial incident in Minnesota. Notice how the anchor sets up the gravity of the situation. This is the Seacon fatal shooting by federal agents in the same state within weeks. This immediately raises questions and tensions.
After another fatal shooting by Department of Homeland Security agents in Minnesota on Saturday, U.S. Border Patrol shot and killed an individual in Minnesota after they said he approached agents and he was armed with a handgun, and he resisted when officers tried to disarm him. The incident, the second fatal shooting in Minnesota after agents shot and killed Rachel Good on January 7th. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz called the shooting horrific on social media, and he is calling on the White House to stop its immigration operation in Minnesota. Joining me now is the Chairman James Comer. Mr. Chairman, thanks very much for being here this morning.
Thank you for having me, Maria.
Another individual is dead at the hands of Border Patrol. Let's be clear. We do not...
Here's where Maria pushes back hard. She's not just accepting the official story, she's pointing out what we don't know. We do not have evidence he was waving a gun. This is crucial journalism, separating facts from assumptions. The detail that he was recording on his phone adds a whole new dimension to this story.
No, if there was any pushback from this individual who was armed, we do not have evidence that he was waving a gun, doing anything to threaten Border Patrol. He had his phone and he was shooting, he was viewing and recording the incident. That's what he was doing, recording the incident. What is your reaction? And you are an elected official. What can you do about it?
Well, look, I don't think there's any question a majority of Americans want President Trump and ICE to go.
Comer draws a sharp contrast here. Same administration, two completely different outcomes. Washington, D.C.'s cooperation versus Minneapolis's resistance. This comparison reveals how local leadership's response can dramatically change federal operations. Pay attention to his language about white liberals. That's going to be controversial.
And apprehend the criminal illegals. That's what President Trump campaigned on, and he's doing exactly what he said. I look at what happened in Minneapolis versus what happened in Washington, D.C. When President Trump sent the National Guard into Washington, D.C., the Mayor Muriel Bowser, supported that.
This is a bombshell suggestion. A sitting congressman is essentially saying maybe ICE should just leave Minneapolis. This isn't just political commentary. He's proposing letting residents face the consequences of their leaders' decisions. That's a high-stakes political gamble.
She worked, her local law enforcement worked with the president, and in a short period of time, they have really been successful in reducing the amount of crime in Washington, D.C. That was a big success. Fast forward to where we are in Minneapolis. We have a governor, an attorney general, and a mayor of Minneapolis who are getting people jacked up, trying to get them, convinced that this is,
Moment of truth here. After all that defense of federal agents, Comer admits, I don't know whether the man actually pulled a gun. He's watched the video dozens of times in slow motion and still can't tell. This honesty actually undermines his earlier confident stance about the operations.
Some type of illegal raid that all their lives are threatened, and they've got all these white liberals coming in trying to run over ICE, trying to, spray them and do everything to disrupt. And if I were President Trump, I would almost think about, okay, if the mayor and the governor are going to put our ICE officials in harm's way, and there's a chance of losing more,
Here's the irony. The governor told residents to film ICE agents, and now someone's dead while doing exactly that. This creates a tragic connection between political rhetoric and real-world consequences. Was he just following his governor's advice?
Innocent lives or whatever, then maybe go to another city and let the people of Minneapolis decide, do we want to continue to have all of these illegals? Are we going to allow our governor, attorney general, and mayor to get away with this? And I think the people of Minnesota would rebel against their leadership, because it's very clear that a majority of Americans want the criminal illegals apprehended, and that's what ICE is trying to do.
Do we know that...
Complete topic shift to the Jack Smith investigation. Notice how quickly we move from one explosive topic to another. Smith testified that Trump willfully broke the law. Those are fighting words, and Comer's about to fire back.
ICE saw the gun. Do we know that it was visible? Or was this a guy with a camera recording the incident and knowing that he was armed, they learned that later? Do we know that?
We don't know. I'm like you and every other American. I've watched that video dozens of times in slow motion. I've tried to determine whether he actually pulled a gun out or not. Yeah, I don't know. I just know that the situation's bad there. On one hand, there are thousands of criminal illegals.
No punches pulled here. Comer labels the entire investigation as political persecution by a corrupt Biden administration and corrupt attorney general. This isn't subtle, he's saying. The whole thing was a setup from day one to stop Trump's election.
In Minnesota, because that was a sanctuary city and a sanctuary state, the majority of Minnesotans, in my opinion, want them apprehended and sent back to where they came from. But on the other hand, I think this situation is only going to get worse. And I really think that there are so many cities in the United States that have issues with criminal illegals that I think they would be better received in other cities. And I hope that's something they're talking about doing right now, because, you know, Minneapolis isn't the only city. And if the local officials and the governor and attorney general are going to put federal agents' lives in danger with all the protesters and getting everybody fired up, trying to go there and disrupt ICE, then I think that's a decision they're going to have to make.
Well, we played a soundbite earlier from Governor Tim Walz, who told residents to make sure to film ICE agents. And I imagine that this individual had taken that directive and was filming ICE agents. But, Congressman, I want to move on, because last week we saw Jack Smith testify publicly, and he said that President Trump, quote, willfully broke the law. He blasted the DOJ's retribution in the second term. Your reaction to what you heard from Jack Smith, and where does your investigation stand in terms of his Arctic Frost investigation into Trump and his supporters?
Well, look, Jack Smith can say whatever he wants, but he failed to prove that there were any crimes committed. And the tactics that we saw he did, you know, he didn't have the authority to subpoena the phones of members of Congress. He violated and abused his power as a special counsel. So, look, I think it's very clear that Jack Smith failed, that Jack Smith was doing this for one reason. That was political purposes. He was put in there by a corrupt Biden administration, by a corrupt Attorney General Merrick Garland, for one purpose, and that's to try to harm Donald Trump, to prevent Donald Trump from being elected president of the United States. This was all political, and I think the American people have seen it. And look, I think that Jack Smith showed the world that he never had the evidence, and he abused his power. Anybody that watched that hearing could see that. So, you know, I know that President Trump's tweeted out that Jack Smith should be convicted. Well, that's going to be his Department of Justice that's going to have to do that. I think the House Judiciary Committee did all it could do and got him to come forward and not only did a deposition, but also came back and did a public hearing. So if that's the direction that the Department of Justice wants to go, then I would fully support that, because I believe he abused his power, and I believe he was there for one reason, that's political purposes.
Congressman, you also in the House have taken a step closer to referring the Clintons, Bill and Hillary, for criminal charges. Why?
Well, they failed to comply with a lawful subpoena, and the majority of Democrats on the House Oversight Committee agreed with all the Republicans that they are not above the law and they should be held in contempt of Congress. We'll be voting on that for the full House next week, and I expect every Republican and a bunch of Democrats to vote for that.
All right, we'll be watching that next week. Congressman, thanks very much for being here. Chairman James Comer. We'll be right back. Stay with us.